Welcome, everybody, to the Wrestling Association Board Governance Committee. Very pleased to see that we have a good audience today. We do have quorum: Sherry Ebert, Eve Thompson, myself, Kate Fulkerson as the secretary. I believe Ray Waddell intends to be here shortly. I believe you have the agenda. The agenda was posted for this. Before we get started, I'd like to ask my fellow members of the committee if there are other items they wanted to add to the agenda, or if I can get a motion to approve this agenda.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to consider removing F and G tonight, because my guess is that E is going to go longer, and I don't want to shortchange that one. Since they're informational, can we push those to the July meeting?
Do we have a second for that motion?
What's the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay.
I would
The
also.
motion is to remove item F and G from this agenda and move them to the next meeting of the committee.
That's Ray. That's code of conduct,
I can see.
ethics, and.
I second that.
It's been second. We're in discussion.
Okay? I'm in favor of it.
I wrote second.
I hate to push the CEO evaluation back. I mean, it's a time critical item, and would hope that we would be able to be organized enough to get through at least that. If we want to move the other one back, it's informational. We're still collecting comments on the code, so I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Ray?
I still agree with Sherry to push them both back. This is entirely too important. It's going to take a lot of time, I have a feeling. And F and G, I'm having second thoughts on some things. I want to think about those two anyway, so I'd like to see them pushed back.
Sherry, anything
The
further?
sensitivity, Eve, on the CEO time, what's the time, just for seeking to understand, what is our time crunch there?
The calendar on it, we have to, in order to get it, we have to get the scope of that confirmed. Then it has to go to the board, the BOC, and then eventually to the full board. And, it will be September. I think we're on a September timeframe on that one,
Right.
right?
And so that's our drop dead date is September, to get it through all those committees.
We want to get the process started a full month earlier this year than we did last year. And in order to do that, the committee needs to take a look at what our schedule was and what the schedule is being proposed now.
It's not a huge item.
It's not a huge item. I would argue that we should at least take a look at the schedule and make a determination, make a recommendation to the board in terms of the schedule for the evaluation. We don't have to go into the other details, but I think getting the schedule established would be important.
Do you think that would take 40 minutes to do?
No.
Okay, so.
I would
I just don't
say
want
we
to
could
have-
do that.
Is it
I'll look
Melissa here? She
to,
had to stay the whole time.
I'll look at Melissa, and I don't want to put
There
her
she
on the spot. Melissa, about how much time would it take to review the schedule and just discuss a revised schedule?
We can make it quick, 10 minutes?
10 minutes?
I move that we just do that now. Let her go home, do it now, take 10 minutes, then we have the rest of the evening. Does that work?
We have a lot of people who are here for the main event.
10
Let's
minutes.
just let it go. Let's let it go the way you have it now.
I'm open to whatever.
I think that it would take 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So Ray, if you'll indulge us, we'll have Melissa deal with this, and then as staff we can
I
release
can
her.
indulge with anybody, I just don't want everybody here.
Just a point of order, you have a motion on the floor
Yeah.
to remove F and G from the agenda. There's been a recommendation for a modification, or you can put another motion on the table.
I would say let's amend to remove F and leave G and do the, as Sherry suggested, do the G in the first 10 minutes, get that over with, and
Let's do it one at a time. I make a motion to remove F.
I second that. We can all agree to that. I agree to that.
that's fine.
All in favor?
Yeah.
So, oh wait,
Aye.
okay,
So we
so
have
wait
a
a second.
motion
We had a motion on the table already,
Yes.
so that
So
would,
he's making a new motion.
Okay.
He said he made a motion to remove F.
Correct.
Who seconds that motion?
I do.
Okay?
I pull back, however you say that, my first initial motion. Rescind?
You remove.
So maybe we should vote on the second motion.
Okay.
And then we can rescind the original.
All in favor of removing F?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll entertain a motion to
Move F.
move G,
Sorry.
item G, to just after C. No, sorry, just after D. It'll be the first
Yeah.
item.
I move to shift item G to item E.
Do I have a second?
I'll second so we can discuss. I'd rather move it before member comment because I think the member comments are going to be related to item E. And I don't want to get sidetracked.
I'd rather eliminate it. Let's just talk about the main event tonight.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'll accept
And
that. I'll accept
friendly
that
amendment?
friendly amendment.
Under item C as opposed to...
Correct. So that so member comments can flow into the.
So is that a second then from you, Sherry, on that? Okay?
Okay. Any further discussion?
I know.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll move item G.
Any opposed, you do
I'm
need to
opposed.
request.
Opposed? Okay, any further discussion on the agenda?
Oh, one more. I would like to add another member comment ability at the end of our discussion of item E. So member can comment before we talk about Lake House and after we talk about Lake House.
A second?
Second, I would like to see the second round of comments limited to 1 minute or less, though, per person.
You accept the friendly amendment? Any further discussion?
I'm not sure I don't want to limit member input, but
I don't
From a
mean on the
process
original.
standpoint, it doesn't-
The original is the same, but when we do the second round after we talk, comments limited. I only said 2 minutes because this could go on forever and ever and ever.
right, I mean, so if it's like, member input, we process that, we come up with a plan, and then you want more member input into the plan. And our plan is not a plan, our plan is a recommendation that goes to the board. So there is a second chance for comment
Yes.
as it goes to the
I
board.
think that's what you're saying. Is that correct?
I just think it's fair to hear what the reaction or thoughts are based on what we come up with. That's all I'm looking for.
I agree with that, but what I'm saying is that second
If
round,
that's
I'd
where
like to
it
see
happens.
limited to a minute for time's sake.
Well, let me just talk about process generally. This committee is not a decision-making body. This committee will provide a recommendation to the board based on deliberations that we have today. And so what I envision occurring is we'll hear from members on any issue of interest. I suspect that the proposed task force on the Lake House budget is what they'll talk about, but we will listen to all member comments on that. Once we've concluded the member comments, we will return to deliberations within the committee itself. Would welcome the participation of our members as observers, but I will not tolerate discussion between members and members of the committee during the discussion. That discussion is really amongst the committee itself. Once we conclude the discussion, my hope is that we're going to, as a committee, come up with a recommendation on how best to proceed, a recommendation that we're prepared to bring forward to the board for its June 23rd meeting. So after we conclude the agenda for the day, what I'm hearing is that you would like to have an opportunity for those that are here in the audience to provide further comments, but limited to 1 minute each. Is that what I'm hearing?
You got it 100% the way I envision it.
Same.
Okay.
I said my piece. I mean, we're making a recommendation to the board, and there will be a whole nother input cycle. So, in the interest of time, it seems redundant, but that's fine.
Okay. So all in favor? I'll vote in favor.
Sure.
All right.
All right, I think we've got an agenda. So, do I get a motion to approve the May 10th meeting minutes?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 10th.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on the minutes from the May 10th meeting? No? Okay. Vote in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, item D, 6:15, and we are 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Thank you for that.
Look at us.
So, member comments?
I
No, we're
just,
gonna-
I think you were going
Oh,
to hear from...
sorry. Melissa.
Melissa first.
Please.
So what I'm putting in front of you, you've seen all but this top, which is a very short presentation. We'd like
this
to put
a
in front of the board in June on CEO appraisal. Back two pages are, or two groupings are her current goals and the resolution that exists on the appraisal process.
Okay, the blue on blue is a bad choice. It's like unreadable.
Thank you, Melissa.
Sure.
Oh, there's words in there?
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I can change it again. I changed it already after. So it's three quick slides, and I won't spend a lot of time on the first two just for timing. But the first page gives you a high level of what the 3 steps are. The second page gives you in detail each of the things that happen within the process. The last page, and I apologize if blue and blue did not come out well, gives you the drill down into what the timeline we proposed would look like for this year. So that would be backing up over last year about a month. So September 1st, the performance feedback forms, which are, you'll see an example of if you haven't seen it yet, Sherry, but it's within the resolution what the performance feedback forms look like.
This form here?
Yes. That would go out along with Kate's self-appraisal for her to complete at the same time, both on September 1st. Return by September 22nd, along with the market study for compensation that I do by the end of September. The assess and analyze would start in October with the intent to have everything back to you all to look at for your October 11th meeting. So that, again, it's about a month back from where we did last year. The ultimate goal is to give the board, the full board, the benefit of you all going to the October meeting to get feedback, but then also having the ability to have a second meeting, which would be the November full board meeting, if that conversation in executive session spilled over. So that was one of the issues that I think we had last year when we were on almost too tight a timeline and the feedback was rushed, and we wanted the benefit of more time to discuss the goals and the evaluation itself. So that was kind of why I'm here to talk about how we can go back the timeline. I didn't propose going further back than this, only because we are talking about an individual with a full appraisal period. If you go too far back, you're not giving her the benefit of the whole appraisal period. So that was kind of my thought process on going back to just September to start the process.
So if I reflect on where we were last year, we only had the one session where the board could look at the performance plan if you want, and I think that we ended up having maybe no more than 30 minutes in executive session, which was just too rushed. And so I feel good about having a full month in advance of what we did last year. I think that will help considerably. And I think that perhaps if we plan executive session with 1 hour focused on this only, we will probably get it. But having the ability to spill off to a next meeting would be helpful. Is there any further discussion on this suggestion? Any questions? No?
It's pretty straightforward, I think.
I'm good with it.
Can I get a motion to approve the adjusted?
I move to approve the adjusted performance appraisal calendar for the CEO.
Do I get a second?
Yes.
Second by Ray. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Again, HR overachieves under time. Thanks, Melissa.
So we'll pick up on our next item, which is the member comments. Is that correct, Kate?
Yes.
Very good.
Bear with me as I prep the timer, okay?
Very good. As you're prepping, we're going to run member comments very similar to what we do on a board at a board meeting. So individuals have 3 minutes. If you're representing an organization, you have 5 minutes. We'll time it. I would urge you, if it's redundant comments, perhaps you can just acknowledge the previous speaker in the interest of moving things along. First on the list is Danielle LaRosa.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention. I have 3 minutes. I need to state my name and address, right?
Right.
Danielle LaRosa, 11401 Wild Bramble Way, Reston, Virginia, 20194. I believe we are all here for the same purpose, and that is who, what, where, when, why, and how can we do better. In regards to the Lake House Task Force, I have a few comments regarding what I think the task force should do and should not do. Number one, I feel very strongly that we need to hire an external accounting firm to do a construction audit or somehow get in external expertise in here. I cannot stress enough that we don't know what we don't know. RA is not a construction firm. And we have a number of highly visible, complex, and very expensive capital projects on our slate. Namely, the Central Services Facility is a $2 million+ project that is in the queue. My concern is I would like to learn as much as we can about what happened with the Lake House and apply those lessons learned to any future construction project. We do a great job with maintenance and with our other day-to-day business, but we're not a construction firm. I feel strongly that this money spent for an external audit is going to pay for itself. It's going to show us how we can tweak our processes, policies, make it better. And if the audit outcome is not positive, as a board, we need to know that too. We need to make changes quickly. As there's been a lot of talk about who should be on this board or task force, who should not be on the task force. Again, I don't think that the majority of this task force should be board members for the sole purpose of we don't know what we don't know. There's so much that we need outside expertise for. We've got to pull experts from our community who know construction project management, who know real estate attorneys. There's a lot out there. I do feel strongly that each person should be approved by Bach. I'm trying to choose my words carefully. If you read some of the comments on Reston Now, it seems like there's a lot of saber rattling right now. There's, I would go as much to say as there are some very harassing words that are being spoken. There's some guns that are being brought out to shoot our homes. And I'm kind of getting tired of it. I'm tired of the large amount of volunteer time that is spent by each one of us. Everyone in this room wants the best for Reston, and I wish we would start acting like one Reston and not trying to be at each other's throats. For that purpose, I think that whoever is on this task force should be approved by this external group as well as the board operating committee. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Thank you. Next on the list is Mark Watts. Mark Watts?
I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mark. John Hanley.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am John Handley, and I live at 11243 Handlebar Road, Reston 20191. I am making a statement on behalf of Sridhar Ganesan, President of RCA, who unfortunately is still in DC, and he hopes to be here somewhere halfway through. And so he's asked me to deliver his statement for him.
So to be clear, the statement is on behalf of an individual?
It
or
is on behalf of RCA.
on behalf of RCA?
As the first line explains that.
Okay, very good.
So this is Sridhar Ganesan speaking, not me. I speak in my individual capacity, as well as for RCA, to comment on the topic that is uppermost on a lot of people's minds. The need for, among other things, a detailed review of RA's acquisition of Tetra Lake House, together with the revenue and business forecasts that were provided to the members last year when the proposal was first made. Also, the initial cost estimates for the renovation of the facility and the subsequent massive cost overruns as reported recently. There are many concerns with regard to the processes, internal controls and decisions that were made from the time the Tetra Lake House property acquisition was first proposed all the way up to the May 26, 2016 RA board meeting, when $430,000 was approved to be transferred from the operating budget to meet the cost overruns, all of which seem to be outside the approved budget. For the greater good of Reston and the Reston Association organisation, I strongly urge that we perform this bottoms-up review of the Tetra Lake House facility and use that as a basis to improve RA's operations and make the governance structure much stronger, whether it is within the RA organisation itself, the board operations, or the various committees. To be effective, the review should include all communications involving Tetra, including emails, memos, staff reports, consultant reports, billings, assessments, inspection reports, contractor bids, phone logs, schedule of meetings as requested by the review panel. It is imperative that this review be conducted by an independent panel of citizens from Reston and not be RA board-led and not include anyone associated in any way with the purchase, renovation or marketing of the Tetra facility. It is very critical for the reputation and credibility of RA, as well as for those of its current directors, and is all the more needed given the distrust and lack of confidence that currently prevails. As a public company chief financial officer by background, I offer my services to be on such an independent review panel. In my capacity as a member of RA and someone with the ability to perform such due diligence. I'm currently in the process of assembling a suitably qualified non-partisan team for our consideration to be a part of this panel. The key point is to set up a transparent, independent review. So I implore this RA Governance Committee to recommend to the full RA Board that such a committee be established to perform the due diligence required, facilitating all support required in a timely manner to perform the review, including making available all staff and directors on the Board of RA as needed. For the benefit of the Reston community, we should also charge this panel with making recommendations on governance structures, financial and operational processes, and internal controls in order to strengthen RA's operating and financial structures. Thank you for your help in moving this forward.
Thank you.
John, may I have a copy of that for the record, by chance? Thank you. Excellent, thank you, sir.
So next on the list, I have Ron Weber. Ron Weber?
I like to say amen to my previous speaker. I live at 2004 Halliard Lane, almost 40 years now. I came here when dues were about $40 for RCA. I'm a civil engineer, I have a master's degree in public administration and a graduate degree in highway transportation. I've been on the planning and zoning committee longer than anybody else, 38 years. I can't believe that this has happened. I was willing to get an injunction to have you stop this when it came out, but I couldn't get anybody to join me because of the money involved, I guess. I can't believe this has happened. You guys, meaning RCA, has done funny things in the past. You gave away hundreds of feet of waterfront property on Lake Thoreau to developers. I could go on and on. Something is rotten at RCA. All right. Excuse me. I congratulate RCA. You called road. I knew Bill Lauer. And he told me once, he was trying to sell Tepper for I don't know how long. Nobody would buy it. He said, Ron, I'm in the job to make money. That's the name of the game for contractors and developers. Just like Mr. Trump, his job is to make money. Now, RA is either gullible, incompetent, both, or some other things which I don't want to mention today. You have a staff of lawyers. I don't know how much you spent, hundreds of thousands on lawyers last year? How much did you spend on lawyers last year?
Sir, provide us your statement. We're not going to get into a discussion. Please just share.
Well, it was my first meeting in 40 years I came here. And my dues has gone up from $40 to $680. You have live, play, and work. Well, the only thing I do, my Social Security check is about $500 a month. I do a little work on my house just to keep up with it because I got to pay your dues. I volunteer to be on this task force. I've dealt with contractors my whole life and land use attorneys. I think besides this, you have to do a complete review of the compensation of the people who work for RA. I consider RA a glorified parks department. Herndon's head makes about $90,000 a year. Our head makes a lot more than that. If raises are given out, I don't even know what the performance standards are. Sounds like who you know. You're a nice guy. You have a nice smile. I think there needs a complete review of compensation for the employees.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments and appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
I'll be back.
Thank you. Dennis Hayes?
Evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I'm at 1398 Old Quincy. I'm here in my personal capacity, but I'm also a member of RCA and the library board and a number of other. And Western Runners, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Some of you may remember that when all this came up, I was generally supportive of the purchase of the Tetra facility. I did have second thoughts when I saw some of the details of the pricing of this. And hoping to gain more information, I went to the community forum that was held at Bronze Chapel a year or so ago. My takeaway from that, however, was that at the end, the large group of us went outside and we went to walk around the Tetra House, but we were not allowed to go into the Tetra House. This concerned me greatly because I asked myself why, if we're buying a $2.65 million house, are we not allowed to take a look inside the house? And quite frankly, I lost confidence in the process and decided I would vote no in the referendum at that point. I bring this up because, look, we depend on you. We've elected you. We support you. You have our best interests at heart. I have no doubt about that at all. But it is vital that you have the confidence of the community in carrying out your duties. I see a very similar situation to that closed house coming up here now. And that is that I believe it's vital and in your interest to investigate the whole series of events that went into the Tetra purchase, and that this can best and only be done by a truly independent group. And so I very strongly urge you to decide or to make a recommendation to the full board to have a fully independent assessment group that includes people who have no axe to grind, who are interested in this community, who are of this community, who believe that we all live in Reston because we want to live in Reston. I know you spend a lot of time, many hours in our service, and I personally am very, very appreciative of everything you all do. And I want to get my confidence back in you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. We've got Yanni Chrysantis.
Hi there.
Sorry, you pronounce your name?
Yanni Chrysamides.
Chrysamides.
Boy, you messed that one up.
Thank you. I apologize.
11629 Hunters Green Court here in Reston, Virginia. I'm speaking as an individual, but I am the president of the Hunters Green Cluster Association. Just want to echo a lot of the sentiments which have already been delivered by Mrs. LaRosa and others, and mostly want to echo the sentiment that I think it's very important that the recommendation from this committee would be to deliver an independent, completely independent task force, one which will not be led by board of directors, and to that end, and not as a postscript, thank you to the BOD for their volunteer service. But outside of that, I want to echo that a fully independent audit and task force should be established. Thank you.
Great, thank you,
Can I ask
Yanni.
a question?
No. Thank you. Just a point of clarification, we'll hear all the comments from the community, and once we've heard all the comments, we will go into committee and we will discuss amongst ourselves. Next on the list is Reagan.
It's Regan.
Regan, thank you.
I live at 11284 Spyglass Cove Lane. I've lived there for 21 years. I just wanted to also emphasize that I think it's really important that you obtain an independent study of what occurred with Tetra House. I also want to express my anger. I voted against the acquisition of Tetra House. Reston Association is a homeowners association. You should never be in the business of acquisition and real estate development. That's, you know, I think you should be servicing the residents and not acquiring property that you do not understand what the market value is and the construction costs involved in renovating a property like that. So given that, where are we now? We're in a mess, you know? You're raising our fees and you're closing pools because they're too expensive to keep open. You know, the services that you're providing for all citizens, not just the people around Lake Newport for that piece of property, they're all being affected. And so that's my concern. I think that you definitely need to regain the trust of Reston citizens, because right now it's Reston Association versus the homeowners. And, you know, a lot of people feel that way. Even though we appreciate your volunteer service, as everyone does, you know, I'm certainly not here volunteering on the board, and, you know, I thank you for that. But it's still an adversarial relationship that you need to solve. You need to change that. So I just hope that something comes of all of our comments, and, you know, that you can certainly take this to heart, that we're angry, a lot of us, and we'd like to see some positive changes. So I hope that this will help. Thank
Regan,
you.
thank you for coming out. Thank you. Julie Bitzer.
Julie Bitzer, 2020 Peppermint Court, Reston, Virginia. I'm speaking as a member. The vote to go to a referendum on Tetra acquisition was in the March 26 board meeting. The results of the referendum were announced in the May 2015 meeting. I joined the RA board for my first meeting in April, and my vote for yes vote, there was a yes vote, for Tetra was as a member of the community. Over the last number of days, I've refined my position to reflect given different perspectives that I've gathered throughout the Reston community and council thereof. The Lake House review should be a factual review of what took place, what did we know, what could we know, the timeline of events, when financial information, actions, decisions took place, what gaps might have occurred, reliance on what data and assumptions, was due diligence performed to the best level possible under the circumstances at the time. This review is an important exercise. There will be lessons learned that will help us specifically improve our processes and procedures in addressing capital projects, and to incorporate those improvements into our governance and operations practices as appropriate. Independent is independent, and the firm or the people selected to be on the Lake House Review Task Force must be unbiased, impartial, and must not come in with predetermined positions. The firm or panel of, I suggest, 5 individuals must come with the proper professional credentials and skills: CPA, CFO, lawyer, auditor, construction project management are the types of skills that I would envision. We cannot afford to have any lingering doubt in our community that there was any bias or selective handpicking. In my mind, that rules out many of the RA members that have been suggested to me. While I would prefer and wish the review members be members of our community, and certainly we do have these skilled professionals in our midst, at the end of the day, I am left with the questions. How would those individuals be selected? Who would make the determination of impartiality, zero bias, of their independentness? How much time would this selection and validation eat up? We must accomplish this review by September 2016, and I see no reason why it can't. I personally want it done before we begin our fourth quarter year-end closeout and before we begin our detailed review of our 2017 plans and budget. And I definitely want to have this insight, data, and discipline for all of our ongoing, planned, and future capital projects and the review of our planned financial outlays. Thus, I am led to conclude that the most expeditious, most independent approach is to ask our current independent auditors to conduct and manage this review, and for them to include any specific subject matter experts like those in capital, construction, project management, as
Julie, thank you so much. Appreciate those thoughts. Thank you. Eric Carr.
Good evening, I'm Eric Carr, 2228 Wake Robin Lane. I here represent myself. I echo the comments that previously have been made by the last several speakers, that this task force you're assembling must be completely independent. To staff this task force with yourselves, to investigate yourselves and your decision-making is a farce. And any conclusions you come to, no matter how valid or reasoned, will be a sham and will not be accepted by your community. It must be completely independent. The proposals that we've heard already are a good start. People with the necessary skill set, with the necessary background, with ties to this community, but with no involvement at all in the purchase, upgrade, and possible future business direction of the Tetra property. I also urge you this, we are in a $3 million hole so far. We continue to dig every day. We don't know where the bottom of that hole is. We find new surprises in this property every day. We have no business plan for this property going forward. We have no idea how much it's going to cost us over time, how it will make any money, how it will benefit the community. Stop digging until this independent task force comes forward with their suggestions, and then let's start fresh. All options on the table, and decide at that time what the best course is for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for coming out. Tammy Petrine.
Good evening, Tammy Petrine, 2503 Foxcroft Way, Reston, 20191. Thank you all for hearing us. I'm not going to repeat what other people have said. My one plea that I haven't heard yet is please ask the rest of the board to cease and desist on any further expenditure on Tetra until we figure out what happened. The community is beside themselves. I'm heartsick. The hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been spent on PR by RA to elevate our community to be cohesive has been torn apart and thrown in the garbage with this. And we need you, and we need you to be strong, and we need you to function, and we're not your enemy. We need to help you fix this, but please stop spending the money now until we get a grip. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy. And Ellen Graves, Madam President.
My name is Ellen A. Graves. I live at 117 Dry River Court. I'm not here to talk about Lake House, but I'm here to talk about an issue that's equally as important to me. I would like to bring to the Governance Committee a very important issue requiring your attention and some type of action from this committee. I've been a victim of racist remarks, and the most recent occurrence was on June the 11th, 2016, at the Operations and Budget Overview Work Session. The total work session was taped, and I think it's being edited now. Is that correct, Kate? Yeah.
Yes.
The racist comment was made by a director. The director very blatantly made a comparison and a comment regarding backyards in Reston and made a comparison to backyards in Anacostia, saying in fact some backyards in Reston look as bad as backyards in Anacostia. When I addressed this with the director, the response was, "You know what I mean." I find this comparison racist and unacceptable in our community. Reston was built on our beloved Bob Simon's principles, and racist statements and remarks such as this were not included in Bob's 7 principles. I've shared this racist statement with several people, starting with my federal judge in New York City, majority and minority associates, and I received the same response from all of them, a real gasp. I wanted to make sure that I was not overreacting. That's why I asked other people's opinions. They all agreed that it is racism in its worst form. This community was developed to be inclusive to all people, regardless of their religion, economic status, and color of their skin or their ethnicity. Clearly, racism was not included in one of Bob Simon's 7 principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there anyone else in the community that would like to speak? Provide your name and address.
My name is James Dean. I live at 11195 Square Cell Court, Ruston, Virginia, 20191. First of all, I want to point out to those of you that are here today that there will be a meeting of the Lake House Work Group session tomorrow at 6:30 over at, at the Lake House or at Baron Cameron Park Chapel? At the Lake House. So you can continue to participate in this process. They have a very elaborate agenda and some 40-odd pages of materials to review tomorrow. So if you're interested in keeping a hold of your money, tomorrow's meeting might be one that you want to check out. I want to echo much of what has been said here today. I want to continue to encourage both this committee and the board at large to act in a more open, honest, transparent manner. It is not enough. I'm a government employee. It is not enough to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. It is not enough to appear to be ethical. You have to go above and beyond that. And frankly, you have not met that burden in the situation that we find ourselves in now with Tetra and the Lake House. So you're being challenged to do that and to restore the trust of your community, of your neighbors. These are people that want to be your friends. But we find that you have not been open with us, that you have not been transparent with us. I also thank you for your service. I thank Kate for her service. I thank the RA staff for their service. I know that you work long, hard hours. But I think if you look around this room, there's a room full of people that are willing to serve on this committee, that are willing to serve in other capacities for RA. And we want to help you turn this situation around. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Other comments?
John Lovis, 11437 Washington Plaza West, Reston, Virginia, 20190. I came here with a lot on my mind, and all these people have said it all, and most of it's gone, but it's brought me to a bit of a different conclusion. No difference in terms of the importance of the study being thorough and being independent. I think that's absolute, and you sure have a good sense of that from what we've heard tonight. You must go that way. We've also got to stop digging the hole, as another man said. We should stop expenditures on Tetra, Lake House, until we sort this out. And by sort out, I mean we go through a study that is done transparently, visibly to the community by people who are not on this board, preferably perhaps by some professional company that can bring the services and not bring the biases of some of us either. I don't think this has to go to a third party. I mean, that kind of independence. But after I listen to this, and if we can arrive at these kinds of understandings, and you guys can take the leadership on this. And I've been to your place. I was on this board through some tough times many years ago. It strikes me that you have an opportunity, and I mean that sincerely. You have an opportunity. If you move to establish a blue ribbon independent commission that does a thorough job of sorting out of all of who did what to whom and when, and as a couple of people have said very clearly, how we can change the governance and internal procedures of RA so that it doesn't happen again. We're all the better for it, and at the end of the day, you guys bring that report to the community. And it's an accomplishment. It brings about a change, who we are, but it also will restore the faith, some of which has been lost in this process. I think there's a real opportunity now if we get on board this wave that I sense rolling over the room. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else in the community that would like to speak? Erwin?
Good evening. My name is Erwin Flashman. I live at 1327 Buttermilk Lane. Obviously, the question of the Lake House Tetra is a serious question, but no one here has given the dimensions this evening of how serious it is, and I would like to attempt to do that. To start off with, the purchase of Tetra House was for $2.65 million. $1.35 million of that was alleged to be based on the ability to build a restaurant out into the lake, which is nothing but fiction. So we start with a $1.35 million excess right from the beginning. Another $259,000 was estimated to be the cost of repairs. In addition to that, the seller agreed to give back $275,000 towards the repair of the building. And today, we find that we are $430,000 in shortfall. I understood, but no one has spoken about it, that $650,000 profit from Comstock for Boulevard condominium was to be dedicated to the repair of Tetra. And so no one has spoken about whether that money has been received or spent and how it has been spent. And so I think that the dimensions of this are far greater than are being painted by merely saying we have a shortfall of $430,000. It's much bigger. Additionally, we have not talked about what other site improvements to be made. And I am not saying that some of these improvements are not necessary or good, but we are talking about real money. And as Everett Dirksen said, $1 million here and $1 million there, and pretty soon you have real money. And here we have real money. And it's serious. It's too serious to be left in the hands of anyone who has had anything to do with this. You will not instill the trust and confidence of the public, of the membership, if you touch this with your hands and do this study. You must stay far, far away from it. And it must be totally independent with people who are competent and knowledgeable about what needs to be looked at right from the beginning all the way through to today and to the future. Your failure to do that will cover yourselves in mud. There's no other choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Erwin. Anyone else here that would like to speak? No? Hearing none? Just wanted to thank you all for coming out on such a beautiful June evening. You're certainly welcome to remain and observe the discussion. As we decided early on, at the conclusion of this discussion, we'll provide you an opportunity to give us a 1-minute comment each. My hope and expectation is that we will be finished before 8 p.m. this evening. Before we get started, I'd like to make a few comments myself. I just very much appreciate and welcome the interest in the community of this issue. Many of the comments that you yourselves have shared are things that I had been contemplating over the last couple of months on this particular issue. As you're aware, I have initiated, as part of this committee, the establishment of a code of ethics. And I would urge all of you to take a look at that draft code and provide your comments back to us. We have initiated a survey. We've received the results. You see the summary report on our website that provides some pretty candid comments on where we are. My hope and expectation is that code of conduct will certainly guide the deliberations of the board itself, its interaction with staff, and with the committees and the broader community. Let me touch on some of the core values that the code addresses. Respect. Treat each person as an individual with dignity and respect. I've served on this board now. This is the beginning of my fifth year, and some talk about civility. We are all volunteers here. We're committing incredible amount of our own personal time away from families and otherwise. And we must respect one another on the board. We must respect our committee volunteers. We must respect and gain respect of the broader community. Collaboration. We've heard a lot about that in the comments today, engaging diverse groups in the community. Create and facilitate excellent communications. Invite and enable interaction among community groups. Stewardship. Work to avoid material and financial waste. To me, these are just not simply words. This is what I live by. Leadership. Keep the community involved and informed. Accept responsibility and acknowledge errors. Provide a clear sense of direction. I provided in advance of this meeting a draft task force terms of reference. Not because that's what I would like to see, but I was looking for a straw man to facilitate conversation and discussion within the community. I think I've been pretty successful at doing that. There are many that thought this is what we were going to do. It was clear from the outset that the Board Governance Committee can only recommend to the board. The board takes the action. The board will take action in concert with the bylaws as well as the resolutions that guide the organization on these matters. Core standards. And again, this is from the draft code, and I would urge you to read the code and provide your comments. This is a teachable moment. I know that I frankly am relatively new in this community. I've been here for 12 years, and there just appears to be an undercurrent of distrust. I heard consistently concerns about transparency. I've explored that in my term here on the board, and I've personally, certainly I see errors and mistakes, but I don't see any outright lies, cheating or stealing, but there's clearly work that we need to do to clearly understand what happened at Tetra, what were the processes that led to it, and what do we need to put in place to provide corrective action so that in the future it doesn't repeat. And as some have said, we've got the Central Services Facility just in front of us, a $2 million program. I want to make sure that we have a proper budget for it and that the project comes in under budget as opposed to at budget. Associated with the Code of Ethics are core standards that are being proposed. Integrity. We as a board, as staff, as an organization, will act with personal and professional integrity. Respect. We will respect others and support and protect diversity. Diversity is what gives us community strength. We've heard that diversity was clearly a founding principle on which this community was built. It's a strength. Responsibility. We will manage our resources in a responsible manner, maximizing our ability to advance the organization's mission, the Reston Association mission. Transparency. We will be open and candid about our activities and operations. And I would say open and candid about errors and mistakes that we make. We need to own up to our mistakes. And I've certainly seen openness to owning that we in fact did make mistakes. We need to get beyond that. Governance. We will govern thoughtfully, fairly, effectively to best advance the interest of the entire community, not an individual, not a cluster, but to the benefit of the entire community. Compliance. We will comply with our Code of Ethics, RA's rules and regulations, and federal, state, and local laws. And I would say not only the law, but the spirit and the intent of the law. You know, perception is reality. So again, I would urge everyone here, I would urge those in the community to review the Code of Ethics, respond, and provide your comments, your specific comments, and edits and suggestions to the code. So with that introduction, what I would like to do is offer my members on the committee their opportunity to share comments, and then let's dig into the stepping forward.
Thank you. I have a prepared piece which I'll hand out after I'm done. And I want to focus not just on this, but on relations with the community and how we can best move forward. And before I do, you talked about the Code of Ethics and the Code of Conduct. It's no secret that the current president of RA has had it out for me for a long time. But I'm the racist that she was referring to. And I went to a predominantly black high school. I'm very close friends with some very strong and well-known black ministers, have many black friends. I don't need to explain any of this to you. I'm 65 years old. This is the first time in my life that anyone has had the audacity, the disgraceful and pathetic to use the race card at a meeting like this, knowing that the heat's going to be on, knowing that I'm likely to say something, to try to make some foolish discrediting of me. You could have picked a lot of ways to discredit me. I assure you of that. I have a lot of weaknesses. This isn't one of them. And I can parade a lot of people in front of you if needed to prove so. And I can get legal counsel of my own if I need to, and believe me, I will. But to be derailed by such an outrageous playing of the race card at this meeting tonight, it just blows me away. I may make a motion of my own to move forward. Respect, civility, leadership, integrity, responsibility. You named it, 5 things. I would expect that of any board member. I would expect it double in our president. We'll have that discussion at a later date. But here's my prepared statement. I want to thank you, the many interested citizens who came out tonight to participate in this discussion related to Tetra Lake House. Since the last full Board of Directors meeting, which voted to send a request for full investigation of this Tetra Lake House management issue to the 4-person Board Governing Committee, there has been a firestorm of community opinions on the matter. I apologize to the many people who attempted to discuss this issue in detail with me. Since the last meeting, I have decided not to create the impression of any kind of bias whatsoever on either side, so I have avoided detailed discussions with either RA board members, staff, the CEO, or the general membership. I am not ignoring you. The relative silence will end tonight as we move forward in the best interest of the Reston community. In an attempt to properly frame tonight's discussion, let me emphasize that the call for a full independent investigation is very clear. It is not a call for a prosecution.
Ray, the discussion is amongst the board, so
Okay.
the committee.
I just have a
Sure.
natural tendency, as I'm speaking to the people as well as the board, so I apologize if that offends anybody, I assure you. It is not meant to be a witch hunt. Neither is this a call to whitewash any events or behaviors. It is an independent investigation. I am somewhat amused that so many people seem to think that the word independent can be construed in such a wide variety of ways. Rest assured that I have no such wide latitude in my interpretation of either the word, the context of this debate, nor what is expected of us if we are to ever have a modicum of legitimacy as a governing board. To those who have been highly critical of the RA board in this and other matters, I share your discontent to a large degree. However, the reality is as follows. I've had some bad meals in my life that never stopped me from eating. I've had bad teachers in my life, never stopped me from studying and learning. I've been forced to swallow some bad decisions in the past and likely will in the future, but that doesn't stop me from diligently working towards proper outcomes, regardless of where the supposed majority might stand on any issue. So we will plow forward, and we will continue to do so. And in this particular case, the outcome to me should be very simple and very straightforward. We were told to develop a plan for a thorough and independent investigation, and that is what I will demand. On a broader scope moving forward, I see many positives emanating from these events and this discussion. As with many organizations, large and small, the RA board has been smitten with tradition and established protocols. And when so infected, it is very difficult to recognize anything other than what you see through the lens of your own paradigm. Hence, valuable voices from the community are often shut off or given short shift. I realize this. I see it all the time. Hopefully, rather than feeling threatened or frustrated by a barrage of outside commentary or a difference of opinion from what your own personal opinion may be, perhaps this new board will embrace the value of competing voices and understand that democracy is a messy business, and disruption of existing protocol a necessary byproduct of an open society. Perhaps we should look at the information and communication flow here more along the lines of a circle rather than as a hierarchy. For my part, I will attempt to keep us pointed in that direction. As for the membership, a number of you feel a constant frustration. This frustration can be expressed in many ways, some more positive than others. I criticize no one for expressing opinions and offering suggestions for change, and in fact, I criticize those who do not participate, those who choose to complain in obscurity. But remember, we can easily be seduced by the negative, and I hope the seduction is nothing more than a temporary affair. Amidst all the conflict and conversation, there's one fact of life we all need to recognize in this room. Although many people think the RA board consists of 9 idiots, we are your idiots. We need your help in working through the increasing stack of issues which require more than a head nod and more than a rubber stamp. I refuse to cite the overused moniker of team play, but I will phrase the bigger issue in this way. If Reston is to move forward and properly face the many challenges going forward, we all need to do a much better job in forming the necessary alliances among members, RA staff, the RA board, and the valuable citizen groups in the community. Hopefully, there will be much disagreement. hopefully, there will be much dissent. Democracy will never work if it's any other way. But will we coagulate into a positive, unified citizenry at the end of the day? Only time will tell. And I sincerely hope that process can begin tonight. There will be strong opinions voiced. There already have been. Perhaps there will be some volatility in the proceedings. But let's try to avoid a toxic environment if possible. As I said earlier, this is meant to create a proper investigation, not a prosecution, not a witch hunt, not a whitewashing of any events. We will benefit if this is done properly, independently, and in a manner in which nobody can question the authenticity of the investigation. Going forward, if you dream of a better future, of a better Reston, please don't let the problems and issues of today have veto power over your dreams for a better tomorrow. We will overcome this particular issue, and we will get things right. Dragons are meant to be slayed, and we will slay this particular dragon. We will hopefully learn to eradicate the environment which allowed that dragon to raise its head in the first place. Let's be defined by our great potential, not by our past behaviors. None of us can predict the future, but we all have the power to create the future. And the future begins in a simple moment, and that moment is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Again, the conversation is really amongst the committee here. Sherry, did you want to share some thoughts?
Well, I feel like I'm not very well prepared after that. Yeah, my initial thoughts. So I agree with most of what we heard today. I sort of always kind of go with the end in mind first, and what do we want to achieve at the end of all this? And I think it's a restored reputation. I think it's the idea that we're not going to read a Reston Now article and find out that we're not being open and we're not being transparent and we're not being all those things. That quite the opposite happens. People are saying, wow, it's great that they're so open. It's great that they're so transparent. That's kind of the goal. In addition to learning where our errors were and ways to correct it, finding out if there's different internal controls we need to find and fix it. So I think there's the mechanisms for how we can get better, and I think if we do remind ourselves that we're basically a homeowners association and we're all a part of this thing, that we should welcome an independent review. We should welcome somebody coming in, especially if we use a volunteer group of our own citizens that have all the requisite skills to do this. I would love to be able to have an audit done of my company free of charge to tell me how I can improve my processes. I think that's a good thing. When auditors come in, I always look at it as they're going to tell me how to tighten things up. They're going to tell me things that I might have gotten a little lazy on and let things slide. So at the end of all this, that's what I hope we can achieve. My thought is of how we get there. I agree that independent is independent. I have a very simple definition of independent, meaning it's not dependent on the things that you're reviewing. The term independent. I think if you looked in the dictionary, we'd all could agree that that's what it means. So this task force, whether it's a firm or whether it's an internal group, cannot be made up of RA board members, cannot be made up of RA staff, or any of those people on the task force itself. It needs to be truly independent. I do not believe that the members should be approved by the BOC or any other group, because then we're back where we started from. RA is dictating where this group goes. I think we need to figure out that we're gonna give this to a person, a group of people, and let them go fill out their team as they see necessary. I think we can carve out what skill sets we think they need, but you know what? We're not the experts on how to do this. There are people that are experts on how to do this and can carve this out as they see needed. And so I think you identify the person, the group, to then go fulfill this team, let them decide what needs to be assessed, because if we're hiring people that have auditing skills and accounting skills and project management skills, if those are the people that are on this task force, they know what needs to be looked at. I can't tell you all the things, I can tell you what everybody here has said, which is true, but I can't get into the noise about that. I don't think we should dictate that, or we're back where we started from we're driving this process. I think RA and the board needs to be as far away from this process as can happen. I think we give a little bit of marching orders, we give them a timeline, and we don't even talk to them until they come back to the board with their findings and recommendations at some later date. That's kind of where I am right now, but that's just where I'm starting.
Great, thank you. Eve?
Well, actually, I want to start with just an acknowledgement about how much words matter, how very much words matter. And sometimes we can throw out an off-the-cuff kind of comment and based on our perspective or our whatever, cut someone deeply. And I think that it's just really important to be mindful of the words that we choose. To just be careful. And really I say this and I'm not going to engage the community, but with regards to anybody feeling slighted or hurt or injured or damaged. But also in regards to this matter, we do toss out words like investigation versus review. Two words have two very different, meanings, and I'm perfectly okay with the notion of a fully independent review. I feel like we have really got nothing to hide. I mean, we all know, those of us, sure, of course you weren't here, but we all know the process that we believed we were engaging in, and so there's just nothing to hide. So I do think that for this group, the task that we have to focus on is, are we going to go with a paid resource or are we going to go with an unpaid resource? Because our governing documents dictate how both of those things happen. If you're going to go with an unpaid, we don't name panels. That's not within our authority. The committees are formed through a process where they apply and they do go through board governance, not governance, excuse me, they go through the BOC. And that's what our governing documents say. That's how they say that these kinds of groups are formed. If we're going to go with a paid resource, then we need to develop I'm going to assume it will cost more than $2,500, and so we will have to go through the contract process that our governing documents say that we have to go through. So I think that that's probably the first thing we should begin wrestling with. From my perspective, I think what makes sense is, as much as I don't want to spend the money, to do a paid review, because I think that I just think that I think that Danielle's comments early on made perfect sense, that having, and maybe asking our auditor to be a part of this, somebody who's sort of in the business of conducting or, looking at books and doing things like that, we don't know what we don't know, and this is the first, I think, it's the first project of this sort of magnitude that we've taken on, and maybe we shouldn't be too surprised by the stumble. So my thought is paid, unpaid, we have a process that dictates how we do either one of those things. My preference would be for a hired resource to do it, because I think that it's very hard for us to get away from the biases that we carry, and somebody is getting paid $100 an hour to do it, no matter what they find out, I don't think they care, and so I think that that's what I would recommend. So that's the long and short of my response.
I think that many of those comments that I've heard amongst my peers reflect where I'm at as well. I think that whatever we do, we need to generate the confidence in the community that we are transparently exploring what had transpired and what the processes were that allowed that to occur, and what corrective actions we're going to put in place in order that it doesn't repeat itself. And we've, as we've shared, we have the Central Services facility just around the corner. Beyond paid, not paid, I think that we need to talk about the terms of reference. And again, we will provide a recommendation. The board will review and approve, and we will deliberate at the board as a board how best to proceed. But I think,
Say terms of reference.
when I
Scope?
say terms of reference, I mean scope.
Okay, scope.
What needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and basically how. And I've shared a format of that terms of reference here. I, at the time, was thinking that perhaps something is a combination of members of the board, esteemed members of the community could do it. What I'm hearing is that probably isn't acceptable. I think that hiring an independent auditor that has the skill sets as part of his team to be able to review this project, in the scheme of things, this is not a huge program for RA. It absolutely is. But in terms of other construction projects and programs, this is a $1 million, a couple $1 million program. Looking internally at how it was handled is something that there are probably a number of firms that could do well. So I guess I don't know how we want to handle this as a committee.
Can I just add a comment? Well, Ray, do you want to say anything, or can I go? It's short.
Go ahead. I'm going to say something while you speak first.
I think I did some calling around and talked to a couple different firms, and we're talking $350 an hour for a firm to do what we're asking. And I think, Mike, what you put in the document that you sent out over the weekend, I think it's so much broader than that. And I know that those hours are going to add up very fast, and I'm not sure there's an appetite amongst our community to spend yet more money. And we're talking, I don't even know, but I'm guessing $200,000.
Well, I think we need to decide what we're asking.
No, I know.
But
I think we heard a lot of that. I don't think just to review our financials, we already have an audit firm that does that. I think it's much broader than that. It's looking at, all the actions that we're taking, decisions that we're making. It's more the internal control. It's more than just an audit, like a traditional, let's look at your financial statements and make sure you're following the policies that you've set in place. This is bigger than that, because I think the mistakes that might have been made, and again, I wasn't part of any of this, so I'm just from the outsider's perspective, I'm not sure there's a big appetite to spend that kind of money, because that's what it's going to cost us. Even if you did we just had a financial audit, so we're already going to get audit numbers, and we're already going to get that. I think it's bigger. It's about governance, about internal controls, it's about decision making, it's about the authority of the board, the oversight. Was there any? Wasn't there any? It's bigger than just numbers, because that would be different. So we are talking a lot of money. My thought is we do have the expertise in the community. We do. We are fortunate. There's people in this community that want to give us their expertise to do this themselves. And we talk about unbiased versus biased. You can't live in the community and not have a perspective. I don't know how you could, unless you never look at Reston Now, and of course that's not true. I think that it would be kind of a shot, almost a slap to those people that are willing to step up and be on this committee, to not have them do this task force. Plus, it's the money thing. I'm sensitive to money. Do I want to spend, I mean, I look at it as my own checkbook. Do I want to spend money on something that I can get the same result from a group of people that are willing to volunteer their time and do it for me for no cost? I mean, that's kind of where I'm thinking as you're talking, is just another.
I would really question how you would ensure, well, first of all, I think scope is, I mean, it's huge in your mind. I'm not so sure that it's as huge in my mind. I mean, I think that we have, we had a breakdown, but based on, I mean, some of the comments I heard, it's like, well, they want to start by demonstrating that the appraisal was wrong. And so they want to begin by demonstrating that we should not have purchased the property to begin with. Well, okay, so as a real estate professional, I mean, Ray, I'm sure you can validate this. Their opinions about appraisals are as numerous as the appraisals themselves. So the scope, I think we are going to have to somehow struggle and get our hands around what makes sense, because we could be reviewing this until 2 years from now and not have an answer, because I think that all of the documentation is available, that all the documentation that was available to us is available, but
I think if part of this is also to reset perception of whatever the community may think about what happened and why did we pay so much. And again, it's done already, it's done, but if you don't start at the beginning, I think there's a story that needs to be told. So again, if we have a group of people that are willing to take their time to do that, it's not a witch hunt, as Ray said earlier. It's just an understanding of were there other things we could have learned that maybe in the future we might want to know that we could have done that differently. Not to say it was necessarily right or wrong, but if we would have asked this particular question, perhaps we might have gotten a different result. And I don't know if that even exists, but I think it's worth the question. So I think the scope is broader than this one thing, because I want to use the results in a broader context. I want to be able to use the results of what comes out of this review to apply to other projects, to apply to how we process things as a board, as a staff, between staff and board, between staff and contractors, between all of that kind of thing. I think it does need to be broader, because if we just narrow it in, we're going right back to what the community is saying. We want to know what's going on. We want to see the broader perspective. We don't want to see, because I can just hear it. Oh, RA and the board, they just narrowed it so far that we couldn't get any of the answers that we wanted to get anyway. So let's just listen to the community and say, let's just do this. Let's open it up. Let's start from the beginning. Let's go to where we are today. Let's see what's out there, what people need to understand, and then we can move forward, and hopefully with a community feel. If we're using people from an RCA or using people from other community groups that have this expertise, it just makes sense to me to build One Reston. I mean, we talk about One Reston all the time, but we as a community aren't One Reston, So is this a way to reset that button and say, let's just start over. Let's get this done. Let's figure out where we are. Let's figure out what we're going to do, and then how do we apply this to all the future endeavors in Reston? That's what I'm saying. And if we're not paying an hourly rate, we can make this broader than just this little piece.
So what I hear is a couple of things. One, that there are individuals in the community that could do it.
But then they have to go through the process. That's the problem.
Absolutely.
So if we can't turn over. We don't have, I don't believe our fiduciary responsibility will say, here, let's just toss this over to RCA and let them work it. I mean, and here's our, here's the email server or whatever the hell. I mean, because I believe that our documents say this is how we form a committee. Okay, and the process for forming a committee is that we have an application process. They apply, they get interviewed, and oh my goodness, I mean, as soon as you're interviewing somebody, then you're going to have certain members of the community will be screaming, oh, well, that's not, it was biased, it was this, it was that. So I think that's, and I guess, I mean, what would you do? Would you say, okay, let's get another appraisal of the property
I wouldn't, but
I
So I
believe
think
that you
that's-
will hire some people who think that that's what should happen though.
Just let
So
me know
that's,
when I-
so I'm just saying, it's, we're bound by our documents, and they give us two paths for recommending.
So if we, just to summarize that, if we decide to make a recommendation that we should use a volunteer committee, there's a very prescribed process that we would go through to entertain individuals that would want to volunteer on it. We would interview them, and then we would recommend that to the board. We would need to have a scope in any case, and I hear you that you would like to have a broader scope, certainly concerned about framing it. I think the decision to purchase it or not, that's a done decision.
No, it's not about what the decision is, how we got to the decisions we got to. What was the process to get there? Right, that's all done. I mean, all this is already done. It's about how we got there. And where there were some, obviously there were some gaps because we are where we are. And it's just finding those so we don't make those same mistakes again.
I think, it's, and this is just when I look at the process that we engaged in and when I look at the board and the board's responsibility as advisors and decision makers, I think our failure was in not demanding greater risk management. It's in, I guess, if they had been luckier to have a person with greater large contract, management expertise or construction contract expertise, that issue might have come up, like, okay, what are we going to do to mitigate risk? What are we going to do to manage risk? What are we going to do to evaluate risk? And maybe, I don't know that because I don't even know how to look for it to identify the risk,
But internal financial controls need to be in place.
Well, no, I don't think
we
it's-
have budgets, and the budgets are.
I don't think that was it. But I think that there's, there clearly, we fell in a hole there, right? We got subsumed by a risk. And I suspect that the other part of it is the way that we have the community engagement layer. I suspect that there's something askew there because we set a budget and then we get the community engaged. Well, you are just bound to have, so.
I think a failing there was we didn't tell the people that we engaged in the community what the budget was. Like, you have this budget to work with.
Well,
that's what this review
an audit would look
Let me
at.
let me let Ray step in, and then what I'd like to do is get back to a couple of things: the scope or the terms of reference, what we would have them do, the timeline, and then this question about volunteer or purchase service, if you want. Right?
Thank you. It's true, this is not a traditional audit. This isn't just financial, this isn't just accounting. And the questions that the people and myself need to have answered go way back to the development of this referendum in the first place. How did it all happen? How was the pro forma put together once it was decided that we were going to do this? Who was involved? How were they involved? Why were the numbers that were given us, and which I, for one, relied upon in supporting this, so far off, and so far off so quickly? So to try to make a 20-year projection at this point, it's fallacy. And we all know that. And it's very difficult to believe for anyone that this just whoops kind of happened. How much was known going into putting the pro forma together? How much was known at the time of the referendum? It was a close vote. If more details were known, it could have gone the other way very easily. So that's part of the investigation there. And then we have a Lake House working group, which everybody tells me is great. I have no idea. I've never been to one of their meetings. But I know that the board liaison for the working group and some other people have said nothing but rave reviews about how great the project was going, how fabulous the working group is, how this is the model for how Reston should operate in the future, and how our committees and working groups should operate in the future. Never once was any indication given to us that we are revamping an entire building. We had a rehab budget to take that existing structure and put it in better shape, roof, etc. I don't ever remember a discussion during any of this process that we were going to rehab the entire building, knock down walls, open it up, what's it going to do. There's no business plan here, as the 8th speaker had mentioned. Mr. Corey's dead right. He cites my exact position. We have a $3 million hole now and no business plan, and we refuse to stop digging. How is that possible? Why weren't we told sooner what's going on? What is the timing behind when we were told? And there may be something to that too. And then for us to just wantonly swap money. This was, by the way, there's no Lake House budget. There was no budget item, no authority to tell the people to do any of this in the first place. All of this falls in the scope of an independent audit, all of it. None of it has to do with numbers. As for whether we should have bought Tetra or not at this point, that ship has sailed. What the appraisal was, that ship has sailed. No time wasting any time, money, energy on that right now. But all the other things I mentioned, of course we have to be concerned about that. We have no idea how big this is or how small this is until we hire somebody who's good, until they get into this and start asking people, looking at books, interviewing. One thing falls to another, and there are known professionals who are exceptional at this. It's all they do.
I get the sense that you are leaning towards hiring an expert.
I don't see any other way, because if we use RCA or anyone else, there's going to be a question of bias the same way there's going to be an obvious question of bias. Even if we interview people to put on a board and we're the ones responsible for interviewing them, forget it right there. Nobody's going to believe anything that comes out of it. It's dead. So there goes your authenticity right there. The only way to get authenticity right now is to have an independent, investigative, forensic type accounting firm, and there are plenty of them out there. And I have the name of one right now for starters that we can talk to, and there's plenty more. Sager and Rosenberg, Rockville, Maryland. These type of things happen. Booz Allen Hamilton, we all know, very reputable, large consulting accounting firm locally. They work internationally.
So what I heard...
Excuse me a second. Things like this happen in a big corporation like that, with international dealings in particular, all the times. Even if there's nothing there, there's always the appearance of something there, so we want to look into this to make sure that everything's cool. And they use, more than any other firm they use, Sager and Rosenberg. I don't think anybody in this room would question the integrity or the authenticity of Booz Allen Hamilton and anybody they would choose to do this type of investigation if it was them. So I'm not saying we hire them, but I'm putting their name on the table and saying that is the type of firm that we need to have to do this. And they'll interview all of us. They'll interview every board member, anybody who even touched this project in any way will get interviewed. Some of the members will get interviewed. So what? That's good. That's a very good thing. It'll clear the air. And the chips will fall where they may. If one or two people are showing less than the highest level of integrity in this, that's the way it goes. We need to know that. But for the most part, I'm hoping it clears everybody of that, and it just outlines a lot of mistakes in our process that we can correct later on. And there are obviously holes in the way we do things. I mean, I-Park, Pony Barn, Lake House, I can go on and on and on, where we're taking $30,000 projects and multiplying it by 10 times with no problem. With this code of ethics, they ran out of money, we're going to ask for more money for them. So this is a common occurrence here. There is clearly something wrong with the way we're doing some things. There's clearly many disconnects involved in this Tetra Lake House process from who knows when. It may go back to 2014 for all I know, to right now and continuing. And we need somebody who's very skilled, who knows what they're doing. And I don't know what the hourly rate is, but a lot of times the guy who's charging you more per hour is working less hours because they know where to go, they know how to get into things, they get you the right answer, and it's a definitive answer. It's not something that stretches out and has a million different opinions. It's an answer. And then when we get that answer, we'll deal with it. We'll figure out where do we go from there. But in my mind, anything else we do, somebody's going to complain, somebody's going to have a problem with it, and it's going to just stretch on and on and on. And I don't want to see this go on for 2 or 3 years, then die a sudden death.
How long
I want
do
it
you
to be
think?
resolved right now.
And what's the time frame? What do you think? How long would it take?
If I talk to these people in detail, I'd get a better idea. My guess is September, October. If we started right now, it's my guess, but who knows?
I think that we've got a consensus here about the time frame that we would want it done in the September, October time frame. Is that correct?
Time frame, yes. Time frame, yes.
What I would like to do is, we've got 20 minutes to 8. We can continue on, but just to try to gel some things that we can agree on. So what I hear is time frame. Let me just go a little bit further with Ray. Clearly, independent, paid professional services is what I'm hearing.
Correct. And
In
with
terms of
known quantity, and with known expertise in this type of a situation.
Please, let's.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is, an expert in these kinds of issues: construction management, budgeting, project
the
tracking.
whole shooting match.
What I also heard you say is that the decision to purchase it and whatnot is off the table in terms of scope.
No, I didn't say that. I said the fact that we have already bought Tetra. So a lot of the people that are out there still bemoaning the fact that we bought Tetra. That's done.
Okay.
So, no, the process of how it happened is very much on the table.
Be specific.
We don't know how this referendum came about in the first place. What was it that Danielle said? The who, what, why, when, where.
You mean the referendum data?
Who, what, where, when, why. We don't have any of that stuff that led up to the first discussion on the referendum to begin with. I'm talking about from the embryonic stage to right now. That's what I'm talking about. Now, let's just start right here.
Okay.
It's really, really, really important.
You want to go back to the decision for the referendum?
Really, really important to do so.
Are you talking about the vote for the referendum?
No, well
Or are you talking
before
about
that.
the, like, when Bill Lauer first approached Reston, or however that
I don't know how that all happened.
So maybe we start there.
I thought that it was, I thought
Well,
it was.
let's leave it up to the investigative accounting, or however you're framing this
I think
company.
Mike's just looking for a starting point.
Here's what's happening. They
wanna
can
get closer.
determine the starting point for us because they do this for a living. They're experts at this.
Well,
When
yes, but I
we
think
give
we-
them enough information, they'll think of things we're not even thinking about. And they'll put up a plan and a structure, which is far better than any committee can do, which is far better than this entire room can do. So let's get the people who could do that. I think we'd be surprised at how low the dollar amount is.
Let's talk further about the starting point. Let me just put it on the table. For me, I would suggest the starting point is we've purchased it and we've assembled a budget for the renovations. And I would use that as the starting point. I'm concerned if we go too far upstream in this, that it really isn't going to get to where we need to go in terms of the central services facility. You know, what processes, checks and balances, budgeting and accounting and whatnot do we need to have in place in order to manage that program, which is just around the corner?
Well, Mike, there never was a budget for the lake house.
We will find out.
Fine, we'll find out, but it's really valuable going way further back. And I know a lot of people out here, they want to know about the vote.
Well, let's
what
keep
went
it
into
right
putting
there.
together the numbers for the vote?
So the
How much
referendum
money was
data.
spent advocating RA's position on the vote? How did this come about in the first place? I mean, why all of a sudden are we buying this property from Bill Lauer when everybody else is trying to tell me that he wanted to sell it and he couldn't? I don't know if that's true or not. We could find that out.
Just to make it clear, what you're suggesting is go back to the time just before the referendum was released, is what you're proposing.
I don't know how far when you say just before. Is that 1 month, 3 months, 16 months?
Around the time of the referendum.
Whatever the time is, it's a relevant first point of contact, which triggered this whole process. And we don't know what that is.
Okay, let me check with our...
Just for clear, forgive me. I'm concerned, and I hate to do this to the audience, but we are taping, and I want to make sure that we do pick up the conversation at the table, so that the background noise, I'm just concerned
To
for
drop the background
posterity's
noise,
sake.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all. I also want to make
Thank
sure
you.
I can hear clearly what decisions you're coming to.
So what I'm hearing is you want to include the referendum process as part of it. Let's hear from Sherry and then Eve along those lines.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I'm fine with starting with, okay, you know, there's a background, okay. We became aware that, or Kate became aware that the property was going to be for sale and that we were going to have, that we could buy it. So I'm fine with starting there. Again, I think that we have, you know, I mean, it was a fairly linear thing that we went through. I mean, and so I don't see any problem with that, and I don't think that there's, it also happened in a fairly short, it was a pretty compressed timeframe, as I recall. Rachel Muir was still on the board, so it was, you know, would have been, so that's fine. I mean, hopefully it wouldn't be, you know, tons and tons of hours and effort.
Can I just agree with that point? I think she's
Right.
No, that's good.
Through 3 for that point. I'm wondering if we couldn't do some kind of a hybrid, volunteer and paid, like maybe we can hire somebody to drive this, and I don't know what our documents will allow in terms of, I don't believe, God knows I'm not an expert on the documents, but I don't believe that we can avoid interviewing and selecting people to serve on a group that is organized by the board. I don't believe we can abdicate that responsibility. And I think we should also be very mindful that, you know, if you get into something like, you know, forensic accounting, as if you were looking for people who were lining their pockets, you know, or, you know, my uncle is a, you know, contractor. Geez, I have no uncle, but, you know, I mean, that's just a whole nother level. That's like, you know, district. I mean, that's just a whole, the whole thing that I don't think is even a factor, and should be, I would hope, super easy to disprove, or, I mean, I don't even know why I'm suddenly in the position of having to even say that, but, well, because, I mean, you know, it's like if people's integrity doesn't look good, I don't think that there's anybody whose integrity is not going to look good. I mean, it's just, you know, we have I think that the process that we have to go through to let contracts is pretty rigorous. So, so it should be fairly straightforward.
Let's just
So-
agree that regardless, we're going to follow the current policy that we have, both for
Right.
procurement of services or for
Hey,
establishing
we
a
have no
committee.
problems hiring a guy for Code of Ethics and his company. Well, we're talking about if Booz Allen has something that looks irregular in London, they hire this firm to go there and discuss things. They don't give them a premeditated,
I know that.
I want it to look this way, that way, another way. They count on their expertise to be able to ask the right questions. And by the way, one question then might lead to another one they weren't even thinking of because they're expert
I
at this.
understand how the process works,
So
but I'm
for
just
us
saying
to try
that
to
this,
predefine what happened and what didn't happen, when none of us have a clue what happened, what didn't happen. None of us do.
I don't think that's what she said.
Nobody in this room does. We just want to find out.
I mean, I actually kind of think I do know what happened a little bit because I was there at the meetings and stuff with the rest of us. I mean, we were all at the meeting, so it's not that
You
we...
have no idea what was presented to you, how it was put together, why it was put together, and what was presented to you, any more than I do on any of the stuff I get from our
I
board operations.
actually had, we had the input of our treasurer. We had a lot of, there was a lot of discussion and debate. So I'm not saying not to let somebody look at that at all. I'm not saying that because I don't believe that there's anything. I think that there's some weakness in the concept of a 20-year pro forma, but that's a different issue. But that's what we're bound by in the governing documents, and so that's why we do them. But I'm open. I think maybe a hybrid is the way to go because I don't see getting away with the range of skills that we're going to have and hiring that and not spending a ton of money. But I don't know what it costs, so I'm not gonna.
We're just spending $500,000 more than we expected in less than a year, and it's an open-ended thing. We haven't even told them to stop. We haven't even put somebody else in charge of the thing. The same people operating the same project. And you're talking to me about you're worried about money.
I'm saying that I think we should have some scope and some sense of it.
I'm giving it scope.
I mean, we do have a scope.
The scope is complete. If you try to abbreviate it and cut it into sections, this whole exercise would be worthless.
Okay, let's get back to what we can agree on.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back. Number one, we said that we wanted to get this, we would like to have it complete, and I'm really wondering right now, given where we are in this conversation.
We're not going to be involved
Let
in
me
this.
finish.
When you hire somebody, Mike, everybody disappears. It's business as usual for all of us. They do their work.
True enough, but I'm just thinking of the processes that we need to go through, and I absolutely agree it should be a transparent, open process. We should follow the processes and procedures that we have in place, either for a volunteer committee or procurement of services. The board has to approve all of it, but we are in the middle of June, and we're talking about trying to have this concluded by October. And so we need to decide in this conversation what the scope ought to be. And what I
We can't let
hear...
a contract that fast. That's what I'm saying. I mean, our documents would say, okay, if it's more than $2,500, you're going to have to do, you have a bidding process you have to go through. That is going to take
Time.
defining scope, getting bids from multiple contractors, developing evaluation criteria, evaluating the bids against that criteria, letting a contract. I mean, we will be into December before we're even
if we're talking
starting.
about the typical RA corporate bureaucratic paradigm where every month you meet and every month you do something else, yeah, you're right, we won't get this done. But I'm talking about if we want to get this done, and if we don't have these arbitrary timelines set up for us, and if these guys are ready 48 hours later to give us some answers, we're ready 48 hours later to talk to them. This can get done, and can get done extremely well, and can get done extremely quickly.
If we were an independent, if we could just strike a check, but we can't do that. Our documents don't allow it.
It has nothing to do with it. It's
It does.
Okay,
That has
so
nothing to do with it.
How would you
keep
do it?
going.
How would you tell Kate to hire somebody?
Kate's not the one that's going to hire anybody.
Well, I don't have any check writing authority, so how are we going to hire somebody? I mean, really, Ray, let's think it through logically, the way that this organization cuts checks. If we are going to say, Robert Wood, our treasurer, we need a check for the $25,000 to start this process. Okay, so we have no authority to cut a check for $25,000. I don't think even Kate has a check.
We had no authority to give them $450,000 of overrun at the lake house. There was no budget. They just did it without telling anybody.
She didn't do that.
And our board liaison said nothing to any of it.
That, Ray, I think that's you're a miscategorization.
No, it's not. It's a fact.
No, it's not a fact.
We don't know it's a fact yet, right? We need to get beyond that. So I think that September, October is going to be a challenge if you're going to hire a firm to do it.
If it has to wait till November, December, it gets done correctly, then it gets done.
I think that
November,
needs
December.
to drive it. It needs to be done.
Some arbitrary timeline just to put a nice fancy report that's bound beautifully and written in the King's English is not good enough.
The scope that we talked about, and I think that there's some agreement, is that we would gather the background on how we got to the decision to purchase it and then go forward. I frankly think focusing more on once we purchased it and pulled together the budget documents for the renovations and whatnot is frankly where I would like to see it start. But I'm open to this committee's recommendation. Sherry, where are you?
As far as where we start,
Yes.
I think we start at the beginning as background on how we even were approached about the property being for sale. That's the starting point.
The primary focus would be around, I think that captures your interest, Ray.
Yeah, I'm not saying primary focus. We have...
No, let me go down to the primary focus, but that's the starting
That was the
point.
starting point for me,
And
is when...
I think Eve agrees with that as well. And I'm okay with that.
agnostic on it, yeah.
What is the primary focus? Because we're going to have to provide that direction to whoever does
To an
it.
auditor, right, or whatever that looks like,
What is the primary focus?
I don't think this committee is capable right now to make a decision on how to move forward. I'd love to hear the member comments that we agreed
Well,
to.
I took a stab at a scope. Could I just read it to you and see if we touch any buttons? If anybody...
We'll include that as part of the notes, part of the meeting, as well as your comments.
And I'm not saying it's the end-all be-all, but it might put a little framework around it. So I put the scope as review the activities of RE staff, RE board of directors, RE contractors in the handling all governance, administrative, and financial aspects of RE's purchase, planned use, and renovations of the Lake House property that have led to the major cost overruns and revenue shortfalls. The review would include interviews with RE staff, board members, including any and all notes, emails, logs related to the Lake House. The report back to RA would include all findings, as well as make recommendations on improving processes and procedures, internal controls, accountability, and specific recommendations on what to do with Lake House property.
I would say that we don't know what led to major cost overruns.
Well, that's
And
what they're gonna
there's
find,
a
right?
presumption that you've built right into that.
Well,
And I'm not trying to, I'm not just saying, like, we are, but getting to what led us there.
You're right, we don't know what led to it, so let's find out. That's the whole point.
Well, yeah, this can be, I'm not married to all these words, it's just...
What I'm saying is that, we had, I think on the construction side, it's probably not hard to understand what led to the cost. We had some bad estimates.
Well, that's what they'll find out then.
So,
But why were there any estimates at all?
Let's-
This was an unauthorized expenditure. There shouldn't have been any estimates. There's a lot of things we need answered here that goes way back. And unless we get a professional who knows what they're doing, and they can do it, they could do it efficiently, they could do it accurately, and they could give us a report that we'd all be proud of, that we could deal with that from that.
Ray, you've been very clear that you strongly advocate for an independent, professional expert to do the work.
Correct. We all know that.
And I think that we're also agreeing with you completely that they need to check what had transpired. What were the processes in place that allow it to occur? And I would go a step further in saying, what are their recommendations in order that it doesn't repeat itself?
Yes.
right? And if you take a look at what I proposed, I thought, that's what I was attempting to say. Review the budgets and referendum information prepared and distributed by our RA, as well as the processes utilized to prepare those documents. I want to have a review of what the board saw and how they were created. And I would like that done, and I'm open to either volunteers or professionals to do it. But I'd like to have experts, individuals that are knowledgeable, to provide that to us. Also like them to take a look at, what were the steps taken for the acquisition and the remodeling of the lake house. Because I want to ensure that proper financial accounting and project management controls were followed. And if they weren't, where are the holes? And then finally, to recommend to RA, because this would put us in a position to be able to manage programs of this scale and scope in the future, recommend revised processes and procedures, because that's how we as a board have influence. I am completely open to the suggestion that we go back to the time when we made the decision as background to purchase it, but I would really like to focus on the accounting and financial controls of the project and program. And I think that will serve us to complete Lake House, and will serve us well when we look at not only the central services facility, but all the other amenities that we have in the community.
This might just open a whole new can of worms, but how is this going to play if we want to spend, and we'd have to put a budget around it, right? You have to.
Absolutely.
What does that look like? And then how does that play? So if we, let's just for discussion's sake, we agree with something between what I read and what you wrote. Something in there.
Yep.
What's our budget? What do we think the budget is? How do we know how many hours this is going to take? Because we're looking at about $350 an hour, and maybe more.
I don't know that
Well,
that's true. We have no idea if that's true.
What I would do is I would...
Well, the two firms I talked to, that's what the price would be. $225 to $350 an hour.
You prepare a rough scope, and you put it out for bid.
That's what the process would be.
That would be the process.
And then we would have
And
to
then we would know.
evaluate it.
And as a matter of fact, they might come forward and say, look, we absolutely need to agree on the scope, and that's why I wanted to talk about the scope. And once you have some basic agreement on the scope, you can get rough estimates from experts in the field.
My recommendation then would be we let some of the community members define the scope. Because if we define the scope as RA, we've already sunk ourselves.
In terms of process, this committee would make a recommendation to the board. We are all individually and collectively very close to the community. That's specifically why I put this document out, is that we can have discussion around what the scope ought to be.
We could have comment, input to it. I mean, I think that, but unfortunately, we are not allowed to advocate our responsibility to the community. I mean, it's like, no matter what, we have to own what is being done and how it's being done, and, so.
But can't we all agree that this is a very unique situation where we're asking somebody to look at us? We can't possibly be part of the part that's looking at us to do the investigation. You have to make it independent. From the very beginning, it has to be independent. If we have to make a change, or we have to do an exception to the policy because this isn't truly an independent, maybe it's never been done before in Reston, I don't know, but this is very unique situation. It's not putting together a community that's going to go work on a bike path. This is a task force that's supposed to look at RA board and the staff and all the activities. How in the world can the RA board then dictate what that's going to be when we're asking them to look at ourselves? It's just, to me, it doesn't make sense. If we have to make an exception to policy and get Ken Chadwick or somebody to write something, so be it. But we got to be as far away from this as we can possibly be, give it to somebody to do, whether we have an internal group create it all, so we hire an external group, or maybe we have an external group create the scope to hire an internal group. I don't know, but we can't dictate where this goes.
No,
Period.
but I think that we need to provide scope.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, we do have to, wait a minute.
Without scope, it's open-ended.
Reviewing the board, anybody can review the board by just sitting down and listening to this.
The deliberation.
I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, it is true. It absolutely is true. There is, other than, the periodic, executive session meeting to discuss, contracts, I mean, most, it's all available. And so I think that there shouldn't be any reason why the board wouldn't say, look, we want input into this process because we want to review the process. We want to review how we got to the referendum materials. We want to review how we got to and examine that and see where it works and where it fails. And
I would say that's, so I would call that, we can say what we would like to see in the report. We want to see those things in the final report amongst whatever else that group of experts come up with.
That's fine.
It's dictating what we want at the end. It's not dictating how anybody goes about it. It's not dictating what they have access to. It's not dictating any of that. It's saying
Absolutely.
the report needs to include, at a minimum, this, and this. We'd like you to start at the very beginning of the process and go all the way up till today, and even take us into the future about how we better ourselves and better our processes. And this is what we like to see. Go forth and do good things and come back in 3 months, 2 months.
In violent agreement.
Yes, that's fine.
Do you agree? Right?
Yes, but I want it to be truly independently analyzed, hands off by anybody associated with RA, hands off by anybody associated with the membership, and let them do their thing, and let the chips fall where they may.
And I think you're kind of arguing, what I'm thinking about a volunteer committee, and I have spoken to a number of community leaders about this, and I think it could put them and RA in a very difficult situation. And so I'm sort of leaning towards
Can you tell me how? I mean, I just don't understand your thinking.
relationships and otherwise. And so I'm kind of...
I still need to understand more about that.
If you have individuals within the community, a group of individuals in the community that are volunteers, that interview staff within RA.
That's awkward.
It's awkward. And so I'm leaning towards paid professional consultants who do this on a routine basis. And I'm saying routine because cost overruns in projects like this are not unheard of. This is not unique in that regard. And I would very much want to ensure that as we're going forward, this is a healing process. And I wouldn't want to put our volunteers, our staff, the board in a position where it could become very uncomfortable. Okay?
For what it's worth, definitely need an independent outside group. I think that what Sherry brought to the table this evening is a good overview with your actions as the second part of it says outcomes. I think that Ray's got an idea of groups, anybody else who's got ideas. I think that it would behoove you between now and the 23rd to get an idea of what the costs are associated with that. So if you use these two pieces and you float it out there, Sherry's identified some groups, say ask them how long, how much, so that you can come back to the board with solid information on the 23rd. For what it's worth.
Appreciate that.
Yes, definitely.
I'm concerned about timeline, and that's why I proposed a timeline here. I would urge us to do this immediately. I think because of the interest in the community on this, that trying to push it off is a challenge. I'm concerned that certainly when I voted for Tetra, and I did vote for Tetra for a whole host of reasons, was the potential for cost recovery. And I've heard that there are some that would like to have us stop. And frankly, I wouldn't completely disagree with that because I want to make sure that checks and balances are put in place instantaneously. The business plan for this was based on bringing in revenue. And I think we've got a season, we've got programs lined up that could use the facility immediately, and I would not want to push that off. So if we could come to the board with an estimate of what the cost would be, a number of firms that might be able to do this, a scope along the lines of what was included in here, perhaps some edits based on what we get. That's what I would recommend to this committee.
I'm still not completely sold that it has to be, I know y'all are going to shoot me, it has to be completely independent third-party firm. Because I've done these before. There's scope creep. They're going to get so far and we're going to want more and the price goes up. That happens. It happens all the time. And I'm concerned about the sensitivity to money, to assessments. Any dollar we spend is going to be reflected at some point in assessments. And I'm not sure, very important, but again, I go back to the fact that we have people in our community that are experts in the fields that would be hiring somebody at $250 or $350 an hour. I'm still not convinced that you can't use our community people that are volunteering their time and their expertise, and we know we can get from beginning to end, and we won't have to say, well, do we have another 100K that we want to put to this? Because we've only gotten to this part of the process. It's scope creep, and we're already stewardship is one of our things, right? Stewardship of the money. And if we have the resources in-house to do this, in-house within Reston, or even maybe not even in Reston, but we can get people to volunteer their time with the correct expertise, and maybe they go in front of the BOC, and maybe that piece happens somehow, but we're careful about that. I don't want to throw that off the table because
Can you get a body to help select the firm?
Maybe get a body to help.
So that
you could do that. We could start with estimates. We could talk about a hybrid. But I think the other problem with volunteers is, they're like us. They have limited time. They have limited hours. They have, and so. We all, I think that there's that also, and there's also accountability, it's like, okay, great. So like another, if we screw up, people hate us. Okay, mission accomplished. But, when you hire somebody and they hate you, you can deal with them from a litigation and monetary standpoint. And so, you have contractual ways to deal with them. And so I'm open to investigating a hybrid option. I think that's fine, but yeah. So I would actually like to, I think that our recommendation to the board should be a hybrid of these two documents, Mike's actions, your purpose and scope, with Mike's actions for outcomes, and that we try to investigate what a service firm would charge us for this, so that we can bring to the board some data.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, but I also just don't want to throw off the rack.
I didn't say that. We can include that in the option.
I just think about my own checkbook. If I can get something at the equal quality as I can buy it, and I can get it for nothing, pretty much, why would I not do that? Just saying. That's just me.
Well, what I've got here with this committee is I've got one individual that feels passionately that it's got to be done, and for lots of reasons, I lean towards that.
And that's great if money wasn't an object. That's my point. I would love that too, but it's going to cost us a ton. Can we take a 5-minute
break? Yeah. Can we take a short break?
take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, and then come back.
Be right back.
Well, no, we can't.
Okay, so folks, we're going to reconvene.
We cannot turn this over. This could be a lot of CA. We don't have the...
So what, just to summarize, and what I'd like to do is get a motion and a second and a vote. And what I've heard is that we will consider a hybrid approach. Certainly explore a firm, several firms that can do it. We'll need to get budgets and so on and so forth for it. We'll also consider involving volunteers, a blue ribbon panel that would be involved in some capacity on it. The time frame is essentially what we discussed. It would be finished before
That's our hope and goal.
the September-October time frame. That we will merge the actions and the scope that's proposed in Sherry's draft.
No, the actions in yours.
The actions in mine.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah, the actions in mine, the scope that,
I'll do that and send it out to you guys.
very good. So can I get a motion to that effect in a second?
To all that you just said?
Yes.
I think I can do it.
Okay, you do it.
Okay. I move that we recommend to the Board of Directors at the next meeting,
This June 23rd meeting.
which means that we will be ready by the 17th for the board packets, that we create a scope of work that includes Sherry's purpose and scope document and combines it with Michael Sanya's actions document. And that we use that scope of work to seek estimates from qualified audit firms, construction audit firms, I believe is what we want.
Yes.
Or audit firms that do construction project review, and that we consider as a part of that the creation of a hybrid committee that would include members of the community and the hybrid firm. That was a bad motion.
You volunteered to make it.
Do I get a second? Any discussion?
I want to make a motion.
There's a motion on the table.
Can we vote on that motion?
Can we vote on that motion?
I'm not so clear on what the motion is, so I can't really feel qualified.
That's kind of long.
Okay.
Can I summarize in less
What do we do it in
words, maybe?
two parts? What do we do first, this document?
Okay, do that first.
Okay, so I move that, I withdraw my other motion.
Erase that, Kate.
Sorry, Kate's like, oh, great. I move that we create a scope of work by combining the document prepared by Sherry Habert and Michael Sanyo, using the components from both documents to create a scope of work for this effort.
Do I get a second?
Second that.
Any discussion? Can I call a vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Since I would lose anyway, I'll say aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And this has been a very productive deliberation,
another
by the
motion.
way.
Right, okay, so now we need to
Second
do a
motion.
second motion.
I have a motion that we revise the previous schedule because I would like to hear member commentary before we take a final vote.
Well,
Do I get a second on that motion?
What did you say?
We have it planned that we're going to come up with a final package to bring to the board. And then we're going to get member commentary. No more than a minute each. I'd like to hear at this point, before we do that, based on everything that's been going on, I'm sure some of the members probably have some comments which may be pretty good that we need to hear, would help us. I kind of would like to hear them now rather than after the fact. So that's my motion.
Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Point of clarification. Yeah. You did add that to the agenda, so.
Yeah.
But
So we don't really need to vote on it.
We
It's already
can't
been
lose this
added.
idea that we're gonna use the document that we're gonna create as a launch pad to look at firms, hybrids, members of the community. I don't want to lose that piece because that's critical.
We've voted on that. We've taken an action.
already-
No, we didn't vote on that. We only voted on the document.
We voted on the
We
document.
separated it.
So
Just
now
because
the
it's
next
too long.
motion is, so now the next motion is raised but we already added that to the agenda, so we don't really need that motion because we've already put that on the agenda.
But what he's proposing is that moving it in advance before we
Okay.
take a decision.
That's fine. I don't have any objection to that other than I'm really, really pressed for time.
So what I'm hearing is that, well, let's take a vote on the motion.
Sure.
Fine.
Aye.
I'll go then.
Okay.
Okay, so what we've agreed is that we'll give
1 minute.
an opportunity to those in the audience to provide comments no more than 1 minute. And please, in order to respect everyone's time, if someone else has already made your point, please just refer to them.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you so
Sridhar.
much. Sorry I couldn't be here earlier. Thank you, John, for reading my statement. One of the things...
Name and
Name and address.
Name and address. Name and address.
Okay, Sridhar Ganesan, 12,000 Lake Newport Road, 20194. One of the things maybe I should have clarified even more, even better in my statement is that this is not an RCA study. This is not an RCA review. This is public citizens. I'm doing this if I offer to do this, if I do this as a private citizen, not as a member, not as RCA. So that's point number one. I've heard, your comments, many of your comments, and if one of the gating items is going through a board, operating committee process, perfectly willing to do that. I think not just me, but also the others, I think, will be willing to step up and do that. So that I don't see as a problem. So let that not be a reason why you don't go down the public volunteer path. I think that's very important. The third point is, like for the record again, is that the whole point of this is that it needs to be an independent review. So anything that is the scope, where it is driven by the board, because of either financial reasons or schedule reasons, if you limit it to a certain size, that will not be independent. Another thing that you should consider is even if you go down that path, you should really have the public volunteers who can again go through the board operating committee process. This is not a problem, right? They should be the one that should be driving the scope as well as managing that engagement, not the board members. So I think that's extremely important because RA is really at the crossroads from a public perception perspective. It's very important that you make this a very credible process that people actually believe and trust. Otherwise, it's just going to go down.
Thank you, Sridhar. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dennis Hayes?
Do I need to re-swear?
Yes, you do.
Please.
Could you give your name again?
Dennis
Yeah.
Hayes, 1328 Old Way. I think we have to all remember, of course, that we're a membership organization. You're members, I'm a member, everybody in this room is a member. You're volunteers. A lot of us here do a lot of things where we volunteer too. And we have different skills and things that we can contribute to our community. I would be happy, you could hire me, my rate is $4.50 an hour, but I come with 2 assistants who are at $2.25 and $2.10, so that's a package, so it's all together, you do this. And believe me, I'm in this world, I like to see clients paying us money, but it's going to be very, very expensive. And the hole that we've been referred to, that we're dug into, is primarily a financial hole. And so I'm a little surprised to hear that we're now talking about spending significant amounts of money when we have something that, as you said, is provided free of of charge. And I guarantee you there is no place in this country, and maybe the world, you could throw a rock in any direction here and you can find management analysts, financial analysts, every kind of analyst you could possibly want. And so people are willing to contribute their time and their effort, and I have great sympathy for everything you guys do, and I really appreciate it. But you're not the only ones who are prepared to contribute to this community. We want to contribute to this community. So give us a chance, and you don't have to pay us.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said.
Anyone else? Erwin? Name, address, please.
My name is Erwin Flashman. I live at 1327 Buttermilk Lane. There seems to have been posited a disjunctive between the two ways in which the organization generally receives work from people, either as volunteers or through as a contract. And to me, volunteers can be contracted. There's no reason why they can't and cover their costs, and that would be the charge to the entity. And so it's not an exclusive way of getting volunteers through the committee for operations and then to be appointed by the board to a volunteer committee. They can be contracted, and it can be very effective in doing that. And all that someone has to do is be a volunteer, gather together the group of people who will work and submit a bid to your request for bids. And that seems to me the most sensible way of approaching this.
Thank you.
Certainly to be considered.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erwin.
Anyone else? Tammy?
Tammy Betree, you know where I live. I've talked to you a million times. I have worked as an assistant project manager for a giant construction firm. I testified before this board, before the decision to have the referendum on Tetra was made. I brought up a lot of the problems specifically at my testimony and was told, thank you, next, okay? That's my background. I will tell you, your time frame of thinking you're going to have an answer to your problems in September is wildly optimistic. That cannot happen. This is serious. This is a wide-ranging problem. It's not just Tetra, it's how things are done in RA. You have the opportunity to fix stuff. But if you use your bylaws and your regulations and a million different ways you can thwart this effort and this opportunity, it's going to be business as usual. And that's what's been going on in the 40 years I've lived in Reston. I'm not a newbie. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Mike?
Mike Shaw, 11500 Hemingway Drive in Reston. Another motion needs to be voted on tonight before you go home, I think. And that's been discussed a number of times tonight. Members discussed the need for having the work stopped before this investigation, I use that word deliberately, takes place and is acted on. Ray mentioned it. Mike gave his opinion on it. I haven't heard from the rest of the board members, the committee members on that. I think you need to have a full discussion on that issue and come to a decision.
Thank you. Anyone else? John Higgins?
I'm going to sit down. It doesn't mean I'm going to stay more than a minute. John Higgins, 2041 Approach Lane, Reston. I didn't intend to speak, but I wanted to follow up on something that Tammy said to you. I think it's unrealistic to produce a thorough analysis in a very short period of time that encompasses most people's vacation plans. So don't get hung up on that, I would say. Second part of it, however, is it's not all that difficult. For those who have been following this closely, as many of us have, you'll find that the examination is going to ask, why has the preparation of the Lake House property cost as much as is now planned? And there's a good answer to that. You may not like it, or you might like it, but it's not that difficult to answer. The $259,000 starting point is a red herring.
No one had ever planned to renovate the building for $259,000. Had you intended to convert it to a picnic pavilion, that would have been wildly too much. Had you intended to use that property as an indoor swimming facility, it would be wildly too little. And the fact is, you had no idea how you were going to use the property. Until the working group gave you recommendations, any numbers were absolute placeholders. So it's not that difficult. And yet, even the simple review is clearly going to go through the summer beyond October. Good luck. And thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Community wanted it, and you just produced. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, this money, Ron Weber, this money issue is really serious, and I suggest that the board immediately freeze salaries and no bonuses for all staff until we find out what really happened.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go back to the committee.
Can I just say one thing? This group, just as a reminder to us, our task is really about the scope and the recommendations going forward. We don't have the authority or it's not within our scope to say whether or not work should continue or not continue. That's an issue for the full board to take up. So I just want to make that comment. And I liked the idea of one way to achieve the hybrid might be to let a volunteer group form respond to a proposal. And if they respond
to the scope.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's definitely something that could be done. So anyway,
Okay, so we need a motion on the second part, which is we've agreed on the scope, creating the scope by combining the documents. The next piece was
investigating qualified.
I would say, but we created the scope in order to entertain
proposals from both private.
It starts the
and-
talking with a proposal. I mean, it starts it. It's not the end-all be-all scope. It's just to get it on the table.
Right.
You have to start with
Goes to
something,
the
and that's
board,
what
exactly,
this is.
yes. Okay, so
that's what that was. It isn't the scope. It's just the scope, the beginning of the
draft scope. Yeah. So
Draft scope.
So
It's a request for a proposal.
so we want.
So you want to take on the hybrid motion and
So I move that we use the draft scope to develop a request for proposal to solicit respondent,
Private firms or otherwise.
private or otherwise, right?
private.
Kate, did you get that?
Use draft scope to develop an RFP to request.
Proposals.
Proposals,
To
yeah,
request
sorry.
proposals
From
Both
private,
volunteer.
volunteer and private entities.
And a hybrid thereof.
I'm sorry?
And a hybrid, and/or a hybrid thereof.
So it could be a combination.
Right.
of private
It
and-
could be, I mean, maybe a consulting company in the community, like Deloitte.
Yeah.
Might.
Maybe Deloitte.
Volunteer, something like that.
Yeah.
Sherry's.
Do I have a second?
Who made that motion? Eve?
I did.
Eve made it.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any discussion? Further discussion? Can I call the vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
I want to go back to what Tammy and John said.
We're not responding.
Exceptional points. We do need more time on this. We're-
Sorry, I missed that first.
We're better off taking more time and getting it right. And Tammy's point that we have an opportunity here feeds into my soliloquy from the beginning of trying to tie in the community and the board and everybody else to make the proper decisions and get things right that we haven't gotten right in the past. That's a great opportunity to do so. Thank you for bringing that up. it is going to take more time to do it. So I don't think we should put a deadline on the project of October or September.
I think we'll know more when we go talk to people about what's doable.
Right. And as for stopping work, I made that motion twice at the last full board meeting, and I was rejected both times. And the proper place for that is the full board. I don't think it is the proper place here, unfortunately. But I agree with what you're saying, but I was voted down.
Can I'm being called into the DRB, so I'm going to excuse
Can I
myself.
get a motion to adjourn?
I need a point of clarification.
Okay.
And I understand Eve has to go. So
Can you go ahead and ask?
I'm guessing that for the board meeting, what you want to do is create the scope to put in front of them with the condition that it's going to become an RFP to request proposals from. So there are kind of two parts to it that you're sending to the board of directors.
Yes.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
So.
And I'm going to help craft it. I will craft it. I know, that's what Friday.
Okay.
And we are not setting a timeline now.
Well, I think that I think that September or October is optimistic, and I think that I would say if we get it done by December, I'd be happy. But
Yeah, I think we'll get
we
that feedback when we do the RFPs.
Absolutely.
I'd also like to ask a question with regard to, sorry, I'm trying to figure out what time it is at the same time I'm asking the question, is I get a sense, and I'd like to put this on the table for the board's consideration, that it would behoove us to pause on projects like CSF and Pony Barn until this is finished. All other maintenance that's required, I think, needs to be undertaken. I think it would be negligent if we didn't maintain what we have.
Absolutely.
But redoing will pause. Is that something we should ask the rest of the board for their permission on? I think that the whole board needs to
I would
decide
agree to
that,
that.
but that's my sense of
We're gonna
something that I
actually
should
take the
ask.
If that's a
learnings.
suggestion from you, Kate, I would accept that suggestion.
I'll take that suggestion, put it in the motion.
Would that be helpful, Kate?
Sure, you can say without objection, you don't need
Without
to-
objection.
Without objection.
Based on what we heard tonight, does the board need to revisit the stopping of work on the lake house at our
I'm
board
pointing-
meeting?
Just so you know,
Oh,
as of Friday, they're going to be done.
oh, well,
Okay, and you've got a camp that's supposed to start there
okay.
on the 27th.
Okay, well, we can't even
As
discuss
well
this
as
until the
after-school
23rd, so
programming.
it's already going to be done.
So and you do have revenue that's going to be coming in to the facility. So
Good information.
I did make that point during the board meeting.
Sorry. I
Any-
wasn't there.
Anything further from the committee? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I want to thank the community for coming out. Very much appreciate your comments, your suggestions. As you know, this is a process. Please share your views. So thank you.